Welcome to the Worth Listening podcast, where we focus on having positive and productive conversations around money. I'm your host, Lauren, a 4-time Olympian and certified financial planner. On this show, my guests share their money stories. Everyone has a unique story and experiences both wins and losses when it comes to money. My intent is to give listeners something they can relate to, something that builds their courage to be open and take control of their own money story. When I'm not creating a great show for my listeners, I'm running my company, Worth Winning, where I help individuals and families organize their finances. Check us out at worth-winning.com. All right, now on with the show. It has been a long time coming, but we finally made it, y'all. We have a real celebrity on the show today, Joe Saul-Sehy. It's okay if you've never heard of him before, but he really is a celebrity because I said so. But for real, if you're a personal finance nerd and love financial podcasts, then you definitely know that Joe is the creator and co-host of an award-winning podcast called Stacking Benjamins and is the co-author with a really cool chick named Emily Guy Birken of a new book called Stacked, Your Super Serious Guide to Modern Money Management. That's a lot of words, but if you listen to the podcast, you'll totally get that that's Joe. And while he's known for being a financial expert, his career started out as a financial advisor who wasn't taking his own advice. He's going to share with us the low moment in his financial life where he realized that it was time to make some changes and what he did to turn it around. Joe is hilarious, and it was so fun interviewing someone that is used to sitting in the host seat. I know you're going to enjoy listening to his money memoir. I am super pumped to have you on today, Joe. I'm just going to skip over the stuff. Like, people want to know about you. I think we're going to figure out how to learn more about you as we go about this. But I just want to know, do you have a piggy bank? Do you have a piggy bank current day? And did you have a piggy bank when you were growing up?
So what's funny is, I had a piggy bank that I found that was hilarious. And I just like things that make me laugh. And there was this little piggy bank that I saw in, I don't know, one of these tourist stores somewhere. I don't know if it was San Francisco, like Ghirardelli Square, or San Diego, or Northern Michigan, which I love, like the Traverse City area, Mackinac Island. I was in one of these stores though, and they had this little metal, like 50s looking piggy bank with a dude in it. And he's in like a 50s style varsity jacket. And on the thing, it said money for drugs. And it's a little piggy bank where you're accumulating money to buy drugs. And it's, and there's all these completely inappropriate things and all this stuff. And just for everybody listening, I don't do drugs. I just thought it was hilarious and very inappropriate. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's horrible. So that was a piggy bank I've had for a while. And every time I put change in that thing, it makes me laugh.
I feel like you probably didn't have that piggy bank as a child, though. What age were you when we got this piggy bank?
I did not. No, seriously, that piggy bank, I was maybe 47, 48. So just to give you an idea, I saw it and I'm like, that is some clever marketing and I am buying that. And it just, you know what it does for me? It always makes me remember, because we try to do a lot of comedy in our podcast, just try to catch people a different way. Just try to make people smile. Just try to reset the conversation. That thing resets the conversation every time I see it. I'm like, oh, cash for weed? Like, really? I'm putting 3 quarters in this thing. And it's cash for weed. I don't know where I buy weed. I got no idea how to do it. It's even legal across the state line for me, which is 800 yards away. And I have no idea, no clue. But anyway, so yes, I had that. And then a few weeks ago, I feel like podcasting is getting more and more competitive and people send you all this crazy stuff. I had this woman on the show. She ended up being a fantastic guest. Her name's Erin Sky Kelly. But Erin, I'm not kidding, sent me this huge box of stuff, not just with her book, but she sent me like a water bottle that had her branding on it. And she sent me a piggy bank, but it was a really cool rabbit. It was this neat looking rabbit. And I actually put it in my office on the middle shelf. And I put the one that made me laugh away for a while. And so now I have this green rabbit, which unfortunately, when it got there, one of the ears had broken off, but I liked it so much that I took some super glue and I glued the ear back on. Yeah.
Here for it. So piggy banks are a thing, guys. They're back in. If they've gone out of style, bring them back because Joe says they're cool. He has 2 of them at least. Did you have one as a kid, though?
Nope. I remember my Parents had a big save for vacations jar. My dad would get home from work. My dad was at GM. I think your dad was at GM.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking before we hit record just how many life experiences we have in common. But Lauren did all the things. Like I ran in college and Lauren might have run, I don't know, a little bit. My dad would come home from work and he'd empty the change out of his pocket. And so we ended up using that. And I remember them taking that to the bank and using it for our summer vacation every year. We go to Cedar Point, being from Michigan. We go over to Cedar Point, or we go every once in a while. We take a big trip down to Florida, which was pretty exciting then. But yeah, they had one, but we never did. As a kid, I never really got to touch money. My parents really were afraid of us messing up with money. And they didn't think that money conversations were for kids. Like when my parents were having a money discussion, my brother and sister and I were told to leave the room. You did not talk about money. I learned hustle from my parents. I learned work hard. I learned respect your boss. I learned realize that people are watching you even when you think nobody is, and the value of being a good person. But I didn't learn anything about money until I got to college. And then I learned all the wrong things.
Okay, tell us more about these wrong things that you learned, because I think if people are like tuning in, like Joe is the money guru and he learned bad things about money. How is that possible?
Oh, I totally did. I'm the guy that's been there. My thing is I made a bunch of mistakes so you don't have to. So I went to the school, the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina. Just to be clear, two things as I start this story. I couldn't have a job. There was no job I could have. I was in a military college. And then the second thing, maybe an on-campus job, but generally those jobs, the work study stuff, would go right toward your tuition. But having a job that paid anything was impossible. And then the second thing was, Lauren, I wore a uniform every day. But the first week of school, I walk into Mark Clark Hall, which is our student union. And there's laws against this now, but credit card companies still find ways to find college students, right? They still got these sneaky things. But there was a table and there's this big old line, and it was American Express. And I don't remember if it was like a stadium blanket or a pillow or a Frisbee or what it was. But I remember there was a ton of people waiting to get into debt, right? And I've always laughed. Back when I was a financial planner, I thought, wow, if there was a line of people like outside my office to get their act together, like there is lines of people to get into debt, what a great world that would be. That'd be awesome. But anyway, so I get in this line and I don't know anything about credit cards. I just know that I can get this thing if I sign up for this piece of plastic. Of course, I tell the truth. I have no income. I'm at a military college and I want this card. And 3 weeks later, you know exactly where this is going. My card shows up, right? All of a sudden, I'm a baller. This is fantastic.
Do you remember the limit on the first card?
Well, it was American Express card. So officially it had no limit and you had to pay it all off every month, right? I didn't think about any of that. I just had this cool piece of plastic in my wallet and I felt really cool. So the first time we got leave, one weekend, one Saturday, me and like 5 of my buddies, we go up to the North Charleston Mall. And we go to this like really high-end restaurant. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this place, Lauren. It's called Ruby Tuesday.
I was going to guess TGI Fridays. Right.
Yeah, that's the other one. That's like 4 stars. Ruby Tuesday has this salad bar. So it was awesome. We have this great lunch and the bill comes. And, we've been there a week, maybe a week and a half, and I want to be everybody's friend. And I take that card out of my wallet and I said, I got this. I got it. And so everybody's like, wow, hey, that's cool. So I bought everybody lunch. Then I walked down the mall and it's like I'm a magnet to the most expensive store. I go into Nordstrom, which in this mall was the most expensive store. In most malls, it's one of the most expensive stores. And I see this sweater and by the way, and I'm an older guy, it's 1986, right? So I had this sweater that's got like this paisley V-neck collar and this like deep purple sweater. So 2 things again, I'm going to remind people. I'm in a military college. I have to wear a uniform. Why the hell am I buying an expensive sweater? Second thing, I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. If you don't know where it's in Charleston, South Carolina, like both cold days are horrible, like both of them. So why I'm buying a winter sweater? But anyway, and I still own it. I still own it just so I remember. And by the way, it still is a beautiful sweater. It's but it says 1980s all over it. So I buy this stuff. I go back to the Citadel and I totally forget about it. It was like, great. It's fantastic. You have to hide the sweater because you're not allowed to have it. So you hit it in the ceiling.
What?
We had drop ceiling. Oh, we had alcohol in the ceiling. We had sweaters in the ceiling. And what's funny is I know damn well that the faculty that did the inspections, right? Because your room got inspected. So they come in, they do this room inspection. They'd inspect you, your room, everything. And it's this big deal. But they knew that in that ceiling, there was like a treasure trove of all kinds of illicit stuff.
Right. You couldn't have been the first set of students that thought of that. Somebody had to get caught over the years, right?
They totally knew. Like if they wanted to bust you, they had it. Like we had a stove up there so we could cook ramen noodles. We had all this stuff. But anyway, so like 3 weeks go by. And then another old guy thing, there was no email. So you get fired up to go back to Mark Clark Hall where all of our mailboxes were. And it had this little glass thing. And if you saw a letter in there, like that was awesome. Like somebody thought about you. My mom would send me stuff sometimes. Every once in a while, I had a girlfriend for a while in Michigan and she would send me stuff. And so I walk to the hall and I look and there's a letter for me. And this is awesome. And so I open it up. I take it out. It's from American Express. Like, this is so cool. And I open it up. Like my buddies at American Express want to talk to me. And I open that thing and it says that I owe them a bunch of money and I need to pay. And I had seriously never thought of that. So I did what any sane person would do. I called my mom and I said, Mom, we have a problem. And Mom said, no, you have a problem. And I had a real problem because I couldn't have a job. So as you can believe, 3 months later, my credit card was worthless. It was gone. And my credit went to a collection agency. By the time summer rolled around, the collection agency had written me a bazillion times. And by the way, I kept paying all these fees on top of fees, on top of fees, on top of monster interest rates. And I think what had started off as like $180 ended up being like $320, $330, which to me at that time was a bajillion dollars. When you have nothing, $300 is the end of the world. And so I spent the whole next summer paying off a collection agency with my part-time job when I went back to Michigan. So that was the first of many expensive lessons with credit. And it wasn't until the late 90s, I was already a financial planner when I finally hit my low point and then turned my act around.
Wow. So you're already in financial planning and still not in a great financial situation. And you're like, okay, I probably shouldn't be giving people advice on their money if I don't have organized finances myself. Is that kind of the epiphany that happened?
Well, that's what I thought. Yeah, I was in my second year as a financial planner. So it's like 1995 or early 1996. I'm across town. I lived in the northern suburbs of Detroit and I was in Ann Arbor at a meeting and my rusted out minivan ran out of gas. And I realized that I had no money. I had no credit. I was in collections with a bunch of other people. I could not borrow money from family anymore. I'd already done that several times. There was nobody left to borrow from. Like nobody believed me. Because seriously, I didn't have a plan. I was just borrowing. I'm like, hey man, I'll pay you. I swear to you, I'll just make more money. I'll find a way. It'll happen. I'll win the lottery. I don't know what I thought. But I always thought, man, something just got to break. Something's got to go well. And that wasn't what needed to happen at all. But I remember, there's this report by a group called Nonfiction, which is The Secret Financial Lives of Americans. And in this report, it has all these horrible statistics, like 8% of people say that they've eaten food out of a dumpster that was meant for the trash. 15% of people, I think the number is, say that they've stolen because they had no other recourse, not because they were a thief and they still regretted it, but they had to steal because they had no other thing. People that say that 3 or 4% of people, which doesn't sound like a lot, but then you think about the number of people in America, 3 or 4% of people say that they've traded sex for money, and just all these statistics. But the one that's going to be less weird than those that hit me really hard is that 150 million people say they've cried about their money. And you'd think that this would be people that are living paycheck to paycheck like I was then, like not sure what I'm going to do next. But while that's true, and that there's a huge number of people living paycheck to paycheck, of people making $250,000 a year or more, nearly half of those people say that they cry about their money. And here I am, I'm going through the seats looking for change in this rusted out minivan. And I started crying because I'm like, I am totally effed. I'm totally screwed. I mean, I'm done. And by the way, what a sham. I've been coaching other people about their money and I'm not taking any of my own advice. I don't know. I think I came up with like 85 cents and I walk like a mile. That sounds like an old guy. Uphill in the snow, 6 feet, right?
Yeah.
I walked to like this mobile gas station. I remember the dude did not want to loan me the gas can because he thought I was going to steal it. And I had just been crying. Maybe now my eyes are all red. I was so done. I finally begged him and he let me take the gas can and put the 85 cents in. And somehow I made it home. I was 40 miles away from my house. I have no idea how 85 cents made it, but I made it home. It was that day that I realized that I'm coaching other people about their money. I'm not doing any of the stuff that I said to do. And all of a sudden I realized it's not about how much money I make. It's what I do once I make it. And I need to forget about the creditors. I need to forget about everything. And I got to take control. And the first thing I did was I found smart people and I surrounded myself with much smarter people. I started with a woman named Susan Virgin was her name. And Susan was just this CPA who has the heart of a teacher. And she just said, forget about everything else, set a foundation. Then my friend, a guy named Tony, who worked with me, knew a little bit about my situation. And he's like, build an emergency fund. Just forget about your creditors. Because I was taking every dime I made and I was sending it off to my creditors. And he's like, you know what? You're already screwed with them. They can't make your credit worse. We got to make your credit better. And we got to get some respect for just a dollar bill. So I stopped using credit. I built an emergency fund. I began then paying off my current debt so I could stay current with anybody that was left. Like there were people that were 3 months late, but they hadn't taken away my stuff. And so I started paying them and then I got current with them. And then I went back and then started repaying other people off. And it was amazing. There were a ton of hurdles and every day was not sunshine and rainbows and unicorns. But Lauren, I'm telling you, within 3 years, I had a nice foundation. And I'd say within 6 years, 5-6 years, I completely flipped it. Like I completely flipped the thing around. And it was all because I stopped trying to win the lottery and stopped thinking about short-term and obvious and instead did long-term and not so obvious.
You have said, oh my goodness, so many things that are so important to so many. I think we need to circle back to this idea of hitting rock bottom and not being able to kind of think about like, what's the next best step to do? Being brought to the point of tears, but then having to say like, okay, well, how do I pick myself up from here? Somebody may be listening to this right now and it's like, I don't know where to go. Like, we do have the advancement of social media from, way back in your day, but
easy. I'm sitting right here.
I'm just saying. But one of the things you mentioned is like moving to action. You feel paralysis when you're, like you said, in that place where you're just trying to survive. Surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. What are your tips for finding those people that are smarter than you to kind of get yourself going and get from like zero to I've got some momentum in the right direction?
There's a lot of talk if you read online articles about finding a CFP and a fiduciary and all this, and we get worried about all that. And I do too. And you're going to need those people in your corner. But you know what, at first, Lauren, just find people that have been through that. Just find people who are a couple steps ahead of you on the ladder and ask, what did you do? Find a way to have breakfast with them. And if you can't afford breakfast, try to have a cup of coffee with them. And I'll tell you, most people want to tell their story. I found that since I've gotten into podcasting, the number of people that are far more open to telling you their story, especially if it's a winning story. Like everybody wants to tell when they're huge and what they did well. And if you go up to somebody, if I go up to you and I'm like, Lauren, what did you do? You're clearly doing really well. I respect the heck out of you. Here's what I'm messing up. Would you mind telling me how you did it and what you did and what kind of tripped you up? That does two things. I think articulating the fact that you need help tells your brain that you're not in this alone and it's going to be okay. And you admit, that, hey, I can't solve this problem by myself. And there's a little bit of AA in this, right? I've never been to AA. A
lot of talk of drugs and alcohol.
I know, right? Is that wild? I've never been to AA, but I do know the steps, and you see the number of people that I've known that's worked for. But part of the thing is admitting that you can't get there by yourself. So just find those people and then continue to talk to more and more and more people, because I feel like when you talk to one person, everybody has their singular point of view. But as you talk to 4, 5, 6, 10 people, you start to learn these truths, right? These things that everybody is telling you. That really is the truth. And so many people, as an example, talk about an emergency fund. So many people talk about emergency fund. You talk to 4 or 5 people and they all say, well, you know what? I quit trying to pay every dollar to my creditor and I decided I had to have some money in the bank. Like you hear that 5 times and you go, okay, that's a truth. That's a good thing. I just think communicate more. It isn't easy to find those people, but I think even before you start with the CFP and you start with the fiduciary, because frankly, also, if you're struggling with debt, those people aren't going to be able to talk to you, which is also sad. That's a whole different podcast because I think first you go to friends that have been there. And then I think you develop surround sound by reading the right stuff, listening to the right podcasts, filling your head with this positive stuff, because you are the people that are around you and the thoughts that are around you. And then maybe you then hire like a money coach through, I think the organization's called the AISPC, I think, which is financial coaches. It's like this, those are the people who help you get your budget together and will help you get on the road.
AFCPE. Yes.
Yes. Thank you. I knew I was going to blow that.
I was like, that's the animal one, right?
I think it's called the CIA.
Right.
I think you go to the CIA and you ask them for financial help.
Right. For the record, AFCPE is where you can find financial coaches and counselors, right?
Yes. And those people will then get you on the path. And then when you find yourself then becoming a rock star, then I think you go find a CFP and somebody who's going to be a collaborative part of your long-term winning team.
I love it. So let's go back to you talking about, okay, I'm picking Change LLC. I'm a financial planner. We know you're not a financial planner anymore. You are a rock star podcaster and now an author. What was kind of the journey for you to get from this place? Like you said, you started talking to some people smarter than you, but like, why did you choose to be in the financial industry in a completely different way, and how you decided you wanted to help people in this way as well?
So I was getting close to 40. You and I, before we hit record, we're talking about what a milestone year for a lot of people turning 40 is. And I get this letter. All of us at the firm I was at get this letter. And it's from a guy that we all respect. And he's giving like 2 weeks notice where he's saying that, listen, I like financial planning. I don't love it. I've been lucky to save a lot of my money, so I have some flexibility. He said, but the problem is I spend so many hours doing financial planning. I don't spend any time thinking about what I really want. And if I think I'm only going to be doing this thing once, I got to figure that out. He goes, and I can't do it if I don't take some time. So I'm leaving. And by the way, the type of place I left was not the type of place where you do this, where you write this kind of letter. It's more like, you ever see the movie Jerry Maguire, the older, like Tom Cruise movie, Jerry Maguire? It is like that. It's like you leave at midnight with the client files and everybody's calling them at 6 a.m. I remember calling clients at 6 a.m. because somebody left and we're trying to keep them with the firm. And he's not doing that. And so number one, the fact that he didn't do that was wild. Number two, the fact that he was so open about the fact that, hey, we got one shot and I can't waste time not having it be closer to perfect. And also the fact that he'd done a good job of saving, I thought was cool. And was another, I was already on a good path then. But it was this reminder that, wow, Chris bought himself flexibility with that. It wasn't the money he bought flexibility. And so it not only hit me hard, OG, my co-host on the show, was also at the same firm that I was at. And I remember hit him hard. Like he and I and a couple other friends of ours completely pivoted after that. Because when Chris left, I went, wow, I'm 39 years old. I like being a financial planner, but there's so many other things I want to do. I'm lucky that I not only got my act together, but I also had a business because we were all franchises. I could sell my business for a bunch more money. And I can use that money either as my retirement, which is what I was thinking, or I can use it to buy me time to go do the thing I want to do. Oh, and by the way, one more thing. Chris in his letter said, I think I have other mountains to climb, which was a pretty powerful phrase. And I thought, Lauren, that he was like, it was a metaphor. He went and climbed Everest twice.
What?
He's climbed almost every high peak around the world. He's climbed almost all of them. And he now runs an adventure travel company, and he's a guide taking other people up mountains. He truly wanted to go mountain climbing. So that was powerful too. For me, I had other mountains to climb, but I wanted to be a high school teacher. And my wife and I have met each other coaching track. And I flipping loved working with kids and I love teaching. So I decided I was going to do that. And I remember telling my clients as I was leaving, saying, I'm going to become a teacher and a track coach. And like, oh, it doesn't pay well. I'm like, yeah, but I'm very blessed. I feel lucky because I've made good money. I got my house in order and I can do this. I'm not really worried about the money anymore. Now I want to do what I love. And they're like, you'd be a good teacher, but you don't want to become a teacher. And I'm like, why not? And God bless teachers. But they said, you're going to spend most of your time fighting administrators and administrators that do the wrong thing. And so I'm like, yeah, okay. I think I can manage. I'm 40. I can get this done. And I go back to school, post-bachelor's teaching program at Texas A&M. I go into this program and my teachers are teaching me that administrators stink and that you're teaching to tests and you have almost zero room for creativity. And they're giving you all these hacks to be creative when you can't. And at the same time, I was doing media. I've been doing a lot of media for American Express at that time, which was the big firm I was with. I was one of 12 people in the nation that was like a subject matter financial planning expert. So we had a radio show, which is where I met my co-host for Stacking Benjamins. Name an outlet, I was on it. And I loved doing that. My friends were like, well, you're so good at that stuff. Can you write my newsletters? Can you give me my script when I'm on TV? Because you'd have to turn it into the producer. So I started writing for other people. Well, next thing you know, I'm in a shorts and a t-shirt and I'm at home. My kids are in high school and I'm at home every day when they get home. And it was super. I could go to all their track meets, to all the things that they did, to their swim meets. And I realized I was making as much as a first year teacher and I'm having a blast and I'm teaching people about money. So that turned into a blog. The blog then turned into a podcast. And now we've been doing that for 10 years. And so I have a job now where I teach people about money and I make myself laugh, which I pinch myself every day. Like if I'm laughing, Lauren, well, you know our brand. If I'm laughing, we're doing stuff well. If I'm not laughing, we're not doing stuff well. And how awesome is that? Like that is just perfect. So that was my switch. I had other mountains to climb and I think I found it because I don't want to do anything else.
And you're super dope at it. That's the other thing. Teaching people, making finances fun, creating transparency, knocking down people who are scammers. You and I think we have a similar passion for the financial scams that exist out there in the world and the crappy narratives. And I really love that part of you just kind of keeping it very real about the BS that's happening and helping people navigate around that.
So much of it. And by the way, some of it's scams. Some of it's just the fact that professionals and good professionals are having one discussion or having one set of discussions. And then you go, as you know, because you kind of straddle the line like I do, where you're also in these financial media places and Facebook groups and whatever. And the conversations consumers are having often are horrible. You're like, whoa, what? What the hell are you talking about? And those aren't even scammers. That's just Earl in Peoria who can't zip up his own pants, but spends all day on Facebook judging people about their money. Like, oh man, before you take advice from somebody on Facebook who knows nothing about you, how is this guy an expert and spends all day on social media? Like, how do those? I don't know.
Anyway, yeah. How does he have time to become an expert? Yes, we got to ask a few questions. All right, so podcast is super dope. Check it out, Stacking Benjamins. But you also just came out with a book. It's called Stack.
I did?
Yes, you did. It took you a really long time to write it too. A really long time.
It did. It took me 10 years. And I wrote this book. And you know what? The theme was good. It was a competent book, but the tone was all wrong. It was very authoritative and structured and like these big tips from on high. And that's totally not me.
Right. We just talked about you making people laugh. So if there's nothing funny in this book, I'm not reading it.
I know, right? I got done with this book after 10 years. I handed it to Cheryl, my spouse, who's my alpha reader. Everybody needs people like her and a few of my friends behind you that go, no, dude, you're screwing this up. Like everybody needs that person, I think. And, yeah, she looked at it for like 15 minutes and said, this sucked. Like, this is horrible. So then I needed to change it. And what I needed wasn't to have better tips because the tips were spot on. It was I had to change the tone to be much more Joe. And so I found a great co-author, Emily Guy Birken. We restructured the book and I got inspired by the Hardy Boys Detective Manual, which I read when I was in 4th grade. And my brother and I carried this thing around everywhere. We dog-eared it. And then I saw the Cub Scout Wolf Guide. And I kind of fused those two things together. There's a guy I like named Austin Kleon who has a little book called Steal Like an Artist. It truly is a little book. It's like a coffee table book or a little like desk book. And you open it up to a random page and it gives you good stuff. But Steal Like an Artist is, if you ever feel like you're in a rut, just think about things that you like and don't rip it off because there's no joy in ripping it off. But pay homage to it, remix it, make it your own. Like if I told you that our podcast is a result of me listening to Car Talk, this old NPR show about cars, where I'm mowing my lawn one day 10 years ago, Lauren, and I'm like, all of a sudden I start laughing. And I'm like, I am loving this show. I'm not learning crap about a car. I'm learning nothing about a car, but I'm absolutely loving Car Talk. And I'm not even really a car guy. And I'm loving Car Talk. And I thought, wow, all these people that aren't money people, what if we had a show that was like Car Talk for money? I'm not at all interested in educating you. Like, don't get me wrong. I want it to always be good advice, but I'm much less interested in educating you than I am that. So we needed that. So the book is structured like the Cub Scout Wolf Guide, where you get badges all the way through the book. It starts off with easy badges, very foundational badges at the beginning, and then really hella nerdy stuff in the back. So if you're already well on your journey, it's much like any other manual. It's not meant to be read front to back. You kind of pick the achievements that you need to do next. You're like, oh, risk management, life insurance, and you know how that works. My car insurance stuff, I need that. Oh, I don't know how to invest money. That's good. What about my credit? Oh, I'll go get the credit badge. So we made it campy and fun. And I'm loving the fact that so many people have written to us saying that they're carrying it around like I carried around the Hardy Boys Detective Manual.
I love that people are actually implementing it in the way that you intended it to be used. So that's pretty cool. One thing, though, is like you mentioned a lot of emergency fund and insurance, taxes, et cetera, so on and so forth. All the financial planning pillars appear to be in the book, or it sounds like they are. But what makes this book different above and beyond the Hardy Boys? Is it the Hardy Boys manual? I can't get it right.
Yeah.
Are there some big ideas that you don't see probably everywhere else beyond those financial planning topics?
Yeah. Number one is at the beginning of the book. I'll give you two. One's at the beginning of the book. One's at the end of the book. I will say this before I do that. The middle of the book where we talk about risk management. Somebody wrote to me the other day and goes, what is risk management? Risk management is the way you should think about insurance. Most people and insurance companies want you to do this. Insurance companies want you to ask, do I need this insurance? That's the wrong question. You might need the insurance, by the way. The answer might be yes, but that's not the question. We need to broaden that. The bigger question you need to ask are, what are my risks? And how do I cover them, right? And that might be insurance. In fact, for a lot of us, it probably is, but you're going to make a much better insurance decision. I'll give you an example. People compare term to whole life insurance, and whole life people are like, well, you really need whole life. Do I need whole life insurance? Well, the bigger question is what's going to happen when I die? Who's going to need money, and how long are they going to need it for? And all of a sudden, I'm not talking about whole life or term. I'm talking about fixing the problem and which one does that, which totally opens you up to much better decisions. But anyway, I think that section I'll put against that. I've seen it before, but I think we do it better. That was pretty cocky, wasn't it? That was good.
Slightly cocky.
Yes, we do that. And it frustrates me because it's usually such a boring topic. And I think it's also funny in our book. But at the beginning of the book, we're well into the year, Lauren. And how many people listening to this are still working on their New Year's resolutions, right? They're like, oh yeah, I forgot about those. And the reason is we do all these goal setting that everybody tells you to set some goals. We do that in a vacuum where we don't put our goals against each other, which really, it's not about being stacked. I don't think is about having more money. I think it's about having more life, right? Climbing those mountains, whatever it is that you want to do. And to get that, you have to, and to not cry about your money, you have to get your money working in the same way that your values are working. So they have to be congruent. And I think the only way to do that is to do this exercise I call timelining your goals, which I also haven't seen anywhere else. But I did this when I was a financial planner with clients, and it was super fun. And you can just do this. Take out any printer paper, if you can find it, or just a blank piece of paper, put it landscape style, make yourself on the left side a stick figure, and anybody else that you plan with a stick figure, draw a line that represents the rest of your life, and then plot all these times on the timeline when you're going to need money. So like for me, back in 2000, I knew my twins, I wanted to help them with college. I knew I wanted to be financially independent someday. I'm not really a second house person. That's not for me. I like to travel though, and I wanted more flexibility to travel. So I wanted to kind of be able to coast a little bit. So I put that in there as a different goal. So there's all these different things that people have. And we'd put them out there. And the first thing I do when I was a planner was I'd say, okay, Lauren, you want financial independence at 55. How much money do you have to save a month to get there? And the answer nearly always was, I don't know. I don't have any idea. Well, let's figure that out. And by the way, that's not going to be hard for us to figure out. It'll be in the ball, but we don't know we don't know a lot of stuff, but we can come up with the number that's going to be reasonable, gets us there. Second thing is, what rate of return do you need on your money to get there? And they go, I don't know. And I'd say, well, how did you pick the funds inside your 401k at work? And they'd say, well, I took this risk tolerance quiz, right? That they had. How much risk can I take? And then I'd always ask the question, how much risk do you need to take? Once we know this equation, why don't we take the risk management quiz after we know what we have to do? Figure out what we have to do and then say, can I take that risk? Because there's some people that are taking tons of risk that don't need to. And there's other people that are burying their money in the backyard because they're so afraid of everything. But if they got a little education, but people don't get education because we get freaked out because we think we got to know everything about everything. But think about this. If I know the rate of return I need, I now don't have to know everything about everything. I just got to know about what did that. And now I can go deep on the few types of investments that made that goal work. So when I plot all these things out, I'm able to do better with investments, do better with my budget to save. But here's the big key thing. In many cases, you can't do all these things that are on your timeline. And now we have to use the $1 million phrase, the kick butt conversations about, that's the technical phrase, the kick butt conversations about which goals are more important. This was always the fun of finance. This was the most fun when I was a financial planner, was having these, okay, I can't help my kids with 100% of college and retire at 55. Would I rather push back retirement to 58 and pay for all of college? Or do we maybe pay for half of it? We spend a lot of time now educating our kids on how to pay for their part of it. Or do we use student loans? Or do we and man, we'd have these, and you know what? There's no wrong answer. They were so different all the time. Everybody would tell me, they're like, oh, I know what everybody says. I'm like, nope, because there is no right answer. And we would have these fantastic values conversations. So we talk about that in chapter 1 right away. Timeline your goals. It's a powerful thing. At the end of the book, we talk about advisors. And this goes to the people that I see on the internet who somebody writes in a financial forum, well, my advisor said this, da, 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 da. What do you guys think? Well, number one, if you go into a financial forum and you're asking them what your financial advisor did, if it's right or wrong, you need to fire your advisor. And by the way, not because your advisor's bad, but because you're asking people on the internet versus asking your advisor. You clearly don't trust them, and you need trusted people in your corner. So if you don't trust your advisor enough to take their advice, or at least have a conversation with them about whether it fits or not, and instead you're going to somebody else, you got to fire them. Here's what I don't like. A lot of people will also tell you, they'll say, you're smart enough to do this yourself. You don't need advisors. This isn't hard. You can do this yourself. And you know what my response is? You are smart enough. But why the hell would I not walk into a room and want to be the dumbest person in the room? Like I have learned that that's the best place to be. Like when it comes to podcasting, everything I've learned is from people smarter than me that have been doing it longer from me. Everything I've learned that I learned when I was a runner was from people that were great coaches that had done it before me. And everything I've learned about money, when I decided to surround myself with good people, was from these success stories that people have been there. Why am I going to take that all away because I'm a smart guy? I think if I'm a smart guy, I have kick-ass advisors. So when somebody tells me, well, I had an advisor, it didn't work out, and I realized that I can do this myself, so I fired them all. No, I think what really happened is you are a crappy interviewer. You had a horrible experience because you didn't set the bar correctly with what you wanted, and you got a terrible result. So you need to change all that. Who are you going to surround yourself with? And so we talk about that in the book, about the power of staying in charge, having people around you that make you smarter, and not being afraid of being wrong. I don't know, man. I don't know if social media does this to us. Listen to my voice. I'm getting on my pedestal now. But people, we all got to be right. And we got to defend these ridiculous assumptions. And what I love about turning finance into a game and gamifying it, we're no longer worried about being wrong. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to have this growth mentality. Go, oh, I didn't know that. Ooh, tell me what I don't know. Tell me where my blind side is. Tell me what I should know that I don't. Like, those are great questions that we never ask because we're so afraid that we might be wrong. I'm probably wrong 90% of the time.
90%? The Joe of Stacking Benjamins? 90% of the time?
Don't get me wrong. I think I'm 85 to 90% right, but there's a flaw, right? In everything I'm doing, I could have done it better. Like, I could have done that better if I'd had better help or known or asked somebody or whatever it might have been. But yeah.
I love it. I love it. And I'm just sitting here listening, and I'm like, I actually haven't read the book, you all, but I'm so intrigued by what Joe just shared that I just decided I'm going to do an idea. Like, it's going to happen right now. So you are the first to find out that we are having a stacked book club. Check the link in the bio to learn more about being in the Stacked Book Club, because I'm excited to read it. Genuinely excited. Not because I know Joe, not because I kind of fangirl on him. He just shares so much information, and it is outside of the box ways to think about finances that I am pumped to not just read it, but also to share it with others and see what they think. And then tell him the 90% that he's wrong, because I'm sure that there's lots in the book that's wrong.
Lauren's going to be good at that. Joe, chapter 3, page 2. Can I add to that? I don't know if you want this or not, but as part of your book club, if we want to have like a Zoom call later on where we talk about the book, I would love to mix it up with the Worth Listening audience. I'd love it. So if you're up for that, Lauren, let's chat and talk about how to use the stuff.
Boom. It is born. We're having a thing.
I'm in. That's cool. Emily might be in too.
Yeah, I would love to have Emily, because you took over the whole show today. We got to hear from the co-author.
I did.
She's probably the one that actually made the book awesome.
Easy.
All right, we're wrapping up. We got rapid fire. So what we like to do is what we call the final sprint, because I was a sprinter, you like track. So this is perfect for you. No pressure. You got $20 in your pocket right now. What do you spend it on?
Well, I spend it on anything, which is why I don't have cash in my pocket ever, because I'm the opposite of a lot of people. And I tell people, know yourself. Right. And I know that I cannot be trusted with cash. I learned that day a long time ago. So I never carry cash, and I always automate everything. I automate everything around me so that my money goes to the right place.
I like it. This is a great segue to the next question. What is your worst money habit?
Board games. I'm not as much a fan of, when people hear that I like board games, I want to be clear. I'm not as big a fan of board games as I am what they do to my life. When I can get 4 people around a board and we've got this game that we're playing together, we have great conversations. We have laughs together. We have community. So I kind of like video games. They're good. They're fine. But board games are just great. Just getting people laughing and having fun is great. And I spend too much money on them.
So you need to go to Board Games Anonymous to stop being a drug dealer with that piggy bank and get you out of AA.
First step, admit you have a problem. And I will tell you, Cheryl will tell you I have a problem.
Okay. We can work on that. What about best money habit?
Yeah, automating. Back to automating. Once I realized that automation is the way to wealth, save your mental energy for the big problems. We spend so much time picking up pennies and making these little decisions. Use automation so that you make good decisions. I'm in a coaching group, which, we talked about surrounding yourself with good people. Now I do what I say. I follow my own advice, different than when I started as a financial planner. So I get coaching all the time. And I'm in this group where this guy said, I've looked at everything I do, and if the pay rate is less than $25 an hour, I find somebody else to do it. And maybe for you, if you're listening to this, you can't do that. There was a time in my life I couldn't do that. But it makes you think, what are the things you can do that can move the needle? Like when I decided to go on a book tour, I said, let's go to 40 cities. And everybody's like, you're crazy. And now, by the way, I've just finished 3 cities as we're sitting here recording this, and I am crazy and it feels stupid. But you know what? If you're going to do it, think big.
Go hard or go home. Something you do for fun that doesn't cost anything.
Oh, hike.
Mm.
I love hiking. Like the older I get, I still am a runner. I still run, but I like running more for just putting on Lauren's podcast and listening to Worth Listening, and I really like that. But the older I get, the more I just like appreciating the place where I am, and just hiking in the woods is amazing. Or we have some nice community parks in Texarkana, and I'll go 4 times around the park sometimes just to go on a walk. It's so great.
Okay, I got to check Texarkana out. Last but not least, something that you want to improve about your finances in the upcoming year.
I have my brain changed, Lauren, about crypto about a year and a half ago. We had a guy named Kevin Rose on the show. He's got a cool podcast called Modern Finance. He was actually the first person Tim Ferriss interviewed on his podcast. So Kevin's been there. Kevin's been around, knows a lot about crypto. And I have been kind of a crypto naysayer because it's risky, and because of the fact that we don't know which coins are going to happen and which ones aren't. But Kevin said that just like with stocks, you need volatility to make money. And the place to be very careful and to dollar cost average into, if you're going to do it, are places where there's hella volatility, right? Don't put grandma's money there. Don't put your emergency fund there, but explore a little bit. And so I've been thinking about that for a year. And the one thing I regret the last year is that I haven't taken like $50. Like I just seriously just take $50 so that I can feel emotionally, because as you know, when you actually have money in it, you feel emotionally about stuff, and it's totally different than this philosophical crap that people do. So I wanted to start doing some crypto, and I haven't, because while I know the future's uncertain, I certainly think that there's going to be a lot of blockchain in our future.
I definitely agree. We have to kind of peel back the cover and learn a little bit more about this thing that is a little bit elusive right now. So yeah. All right, we have made it to the finish line. I'm going to go ahead and give you a medal. You win. It was you're okay at sprinting. You're a little long-winded for sprinting, but since you're the only person in the race, you win. This is your time to shine. Stand on the podium, shout yourself out, tell us where we can find you, how we can support you. Say whatever you want to say right now.
All right. Find me at the Stacking Benjamin show every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You'll see Lauren there probably a couple times a year, hanging out with us in my mom's basement where we do the show. And you can find me on tour with my book Stacked, hopefully at a city near you. StackingBenjamins.com/stack gives you all the cities. Just come hang out with other like-minded people. Lauren was nice enough to be our MC at our first stop in Dallas. And it was really cool. We had a nice group of money geeks, and it was so fun. And some people that aren't yet money geeks that we talked to that were like, wow, this is not the intimidating hardcore group I thought it was. These are fun people that like to just laugh. So come join us.
All right. That's all for now, folks. I hope you enjoyed listening to Joe's Money Memoir today. One of the reasons that the Worth Listening podcast exists is because I believe that there is power in people sharing their experiences. And I love the way this came through in Joe's story. One of the things he mentioned was that when a coworker decided to quit his job and pursue something different, a simple letter to his coworkers helped make a big impact on at least a couple of them. So while you may not think so, there is power in your story. When you share it, you're able to speak to people even when you're not intentionally trying to do so. So don't be afraid to share your unique experiences. Joe also talked about why he left financial planning. If you're a regular listener, you also know that we believe you should work with a fee-only, fiduciary, certified financial planner. That is someone who is not making a commission on selling you investment products. And I'm seeing it more and more that those who are financial advisors on the commission side of the industry that are passionate about helping people are leaving because they're facing a moral debacle when it comes to pushing products, and when their soul is telling them to recommend what are the best options and they don't have a lot of options available to them. So it's important to pick someone that you know has your best interest at heart and that you're careful about choosing who you work with. All right, let's wrap it up. I got a great idea in the middle of the show. And when you get a great idea, you just have to run with it. So I'm doing this book club. It is happening. It's real. I literally made it up in the middle of that conversation, but I am pumped to do it. Figure out how to get tons of you interested. And who knows, maybe this will be a book club that goes for years and years and years. And okay, maybe not years and years and years, but more than one book. I can see it happening now. We're going to get some momentum behind this, and it's starting with the book called Stat. If you're interested in joining the book club, you can check the show notes for the link, or you can go to worth-listening.com and you can click that big button that says book club on it to get all the details. We're starting in July, so I'm not sure what day you're listening to this episode, but if it's before July of 2022, there is still time to sign up. That's all I got for you today. As always, if you have financial questions, suggestions for guests, or would like to share your own money memoir, please don't hesitate to reach out, worth-listening.com.